I'd like to tell you the story of this knife, which is the first knife I made while I whittle on this piece of cherry burl. I could go on and on, but I'll try and keep it kind of quick. I was making a musical instrument. I decided to make something like a little 3-string electric guitar with a lot of enthusiasm, not a lot of prior knowledge. And I kind of got stuck on the neck, which is a whittling task, really. I didn't know that. I was trying to plane it. And I approached a friendly acquaintance who's a luthier. He makes violins and violoncellos, violas, double basses. We became friends. He told me that I could come and work in his studio and I could get all kinds of advice and techniques from him, but I couldn't use, and I could use some of his tools, but I couldn't use his knives. A lot of his bladed tools were personal. So he said, if you're going to make a knife, if you're going to make a neck, the first thing you need is to make a knife. You've got to make your own knife. I'll show you how. The way my teacher taught me, you're going to use an old straight razor. Find an old straight razor. He might have given me this one. Solingen, best, right? So here's an example of something you might use. It's a straight razor that, I don't know if they broke the end off and then refinished it, or they started making a knife, but I don't think it came like with that shape from the factory. I would be loath to maybe make this into a knife like this because of the wonderful etching. But maybe some kind of knife, letter opener or something useful. I collected a lot of these old razor blades. I look for cracked ones and, good ones too, but they're for shaving with. You find an old one, like this was cracked and pretty useless for shaving. You take out the core. So something to consider with this, the handle is made out of a skateboard in this instance. I had a broken Tony Alva skateboard with this lovely colored plywood. So otherwise you would, split a piece of wood or whatever. It's like a clamshell. So they're two halves and the blade is nested, it's ground down. And there's a lot of blades still in the handle. You can kind of see marks maybe from where I've previously ground down the handle. It was very small to begin with. You take the handle off to expose more blade, because as you keep sharpening it, it gets smaller. So there are a few years left in this yet. It'll just end up with a shorter handle. And the handle was longer. I made the handle massive to start out. Had a hole in it here for hanging it. So, they change over time. And it whittles very well. So the grind is a peculiarity because it's kind of like a hollow grind, but then you flatten it out. And then in the end, when you're sharpening, of course, you convex it just a tiny bit. So it's a flattened, hollow, convex grind, or whatever order you want to put it in. Makes no sense, but that's kind of what it is. And this is very good for, especially good for making flats, because it's ultra flat, being slightly hollowed. But a conventional hollow grind, you go like this, it's just going to dig in. But some hollow grinds work well for whittling, I've discovered. So I got into making this kind of knife, and I made perhaps about 10 of them. So I have a few more that I'd like to show at some point. Can you hear the puppy having nightmares? Don't worry, puppy. It's worse than you think. Well, I'm going to be sat here whittling like this for a while. But I told the story of the knife. And that's how I started making knives. I sold a knife the other day to my cousin. He came to visit. First he found a box of old pocket knives I have that I picked up cheap somewhere. And he liked the Buck 527. So I gave it to him, and he was very excited about that. He was happy about it. So I said, oh, if you like knives, let me show you my knives that I make. And he started asking, wow, would this be for sale? And, oh, well, you know, I always think about selling them when I make a knife, but once it's made, I want to keep it. And, but yeah, in principle, you know, I think I should make knives and sell them, right? How many can I make just for myself? But I like making them. I really like it. It's fun. I'm new to it, but I'm very keen. And so my cousin, he liked the knife he liked best was the one I had on my belt, which I made using some of this Cherry Burl and a Stanley chisel from the 80s. Let me grab one. Stepped on it. Whoops. Yes. One of these guys. They made them in 3 different sizes. So what can I tell you? That's a 1980s Stanley chisel. Presumably cheap and cheerful, made for domestic use. They banged them out, must have made 1 million of them. And I guess it's some kind of good old carbon steel, or maybe not. I did a force patina and it didn't take that well, so maybe there's some chrome vanadium or I don't know what. But it's a vintage steel. And what it has for me, like the straight razors, is a heat treatment. Because I don't have the equipment, I don't know how to do it. I'm a novice. So you get something like this, all you have to do is grind it. And I could start by grinding it, and then when I got it to a certain stage, I can cut the handle off. And that's what I did. So it's like a pucco, the knife I made. But I did it the same way with these razor knives. I split down the middle. And then I put it in. So, you know, instead of drilling here and then you fit it in and put a collar on, that way you're generally going to have a weaker tang. It's going to be more of a stick. But you can see this here, it goes out and then it goes stick, right? And down here there's a hole. So I can drill a hole here, have another hole here, that's 2 pins. And it's a pretty solid half tang, you know. You're gonna break the handle or something else before you break that joint. Because, you know, it's pinned into a clamshell with epoxy. It's a very strong union. You know, it's not for a pucco style knife. Adequate. And yeah, that knife went. So I kind of want to make a replacement. And I'm going to see if I can put a photo of that knife in the thumbnail for this video.